Imagine it's 14th in September 1924. You're a 9-year-old schoolboy living in Pocantico Hills, New York, United States. Outside your window, the lawns of Kykewit roll down like a private kingdom of stone, trees, and silence. Inside the house, money does not arrive as magic. It arrives as coins, chores, and columns on a page. You sharpen pencils, run small errands, and write every cent in a ledger so neat it looks almost nervous. At the end of the week, your father checks the numbers, and the cash in your pocket has to match the story your handwriting tells. You're told that some of what you get must be saved, some must be given away, and only a slice is truly yours to spend. In one of the richest families on earth, even a child learns that wealth is not a feast. It is an assignment. If you have ever wondered why some children grow up seeing money as a tool while others grow up seeing it as a mystery, stay with me. What you are about to hear is not a theory. It is a pattern. It has appeared in merchant houses, banking dynasties, and industrial empires. And once you see it, you cannot really unsee it. If you find value in this kind of historical clarity, subscribing takes 2 seconds. It helps you stay ahead of patterns most people only notice after the damage is done. Now the turn. The child in that room is David Rockefeller, years before he became one of the most powerful bankers in America. He later remembered that his father gave the children modest allowances and then made them write down what they received and what they spent, week after week, until the numbers in the book and the coins in the pocket matched exactly. In the Rockefeller household, this was not treated as a cute little exercise. It was moral training. It was character training. It was a way of teaching a child that money had weight. That is what this video is really about. Not stock picks, not tax tricks, not the fantasy that rich parents sit their children down before age 10 and whisper some secret code. History shows something both simpler and more powerful. The families that kept wealth for longer, or rebuilt it after loss, often started early. They started with a set of small conversations and rituals very early in life. Count it, wait for it, record it, share some of it, understand where it came from, understand that it can leave. Before we go further, there is something important to understand. The first money lesson is rarely spoken as a lesson. It is absorbed the way a house absorbs smoke, quietly, through repetition, through what children see adults do. When bills arrive, when gifts are given, when spending is delayed, when a mistake is admitted, when a purchase is explained instead of hidden. A 2013 report for the Money Advice Service, written by Cambridge researchers David Whitebread and Sue Bingham, argued that ideas form early. By about age 7, several of the basic ideas connected to later financial behavior have usually begun to form. A University of Michigan study later tested 225 children between ages 5 and 10 and found their feelings predicted their actions. 4 times as many were classed as tightwads, meaning children who feel pain when spending, as spendthrifts, meaning children who spend more freely. Think of a child's money mind like wet cement. Once the first footprints go in, later steps tend to follow the same grooves. Not forever. Cement can be broken, but it takes effort. That is why the core mechanism here is not intelligence. It is early financial socialization, which is a technical phrase for simple reality. Children learn what money means before finance works. They learn whether money is discussed or avoided, whether it is tied to work or to impulse, whether it is scarce, shameful, powerful, dangerous, generous, or normal. Rich parents make money visible without making it mystical. They turn an invisible force into a household language. That sounds almost too simple, but history keeps coming back to the same point. Children do not need a lecture on macroeconomics, which means the behavior of an entire economy, more than they need a lecture on architecture. They need repeated contact with reality. This costs money. This took work. This can wait. This part is forgiving. In older societies, that happened naturally because children watched adults pay in coins, count change, or keep notebooks. In modern life, money has become ghost-like. Bills are auto-paid. Salaries appear on screens. Credit cards glide. Phones beep. The whole system is smooth, in the way deep water can look smooth before it pulls you under. So if parents do not make money visible on purpose, children may grow up with spending power before they grow up with spending understanding. And this brings us directly to the first part of the historical record. In the Rockefeller family, the great fear was corruption by abundance. John D. Rockefeller Jr. had watched what vast wealth did to public opinion, to family pressure, and to personal conscience. So he built a system around his children that almost looked old-fashioned on purpose. PBS documents that he insisted on ledgers. Children were told to spend only a third of what they earned from chores, while the other 2/3 were saved or donated. Smithsonian preserved a firm-born May 1920 memorandum between John D. Rockefeller Jr. and his son, John D. Rockefeller III. The son, then 14, was to receive $1.50 per week. If he kept his accounts accurately, the allowance rose. If he did not, it fell by 10 cents. At least 20% had to go to benevolences, and at least 20% had to be saved. Notice what is hiding inside that little family contract. The point was not the money. The point was the feedback loop. Action, record, review, consequence. It worked like a tiny private accounting firm installed in a child's bedroom. Accuracy was rewarded. Sloppiness had a price. Spending was never separated from memory. Giving was never separated from receiving. Because the sums were small, the lessons could be learned cheaply. Rich families let children make low-cost mistakes early. Ordinary Americans in the early 20th century experienced money very differently. Many working families had no investments to discuss. Money came in the form of wages and left in the form of rent, coal, food, and debt. For millions, the household budget was a leaky bucket carried uphill. Children often learned urgency before they learned planning. Spend it before it is needed elsewhere. Use it before the price rises. Hide it because someone may ask for it. The Rockefellers, by contrast, were teaching the opposite emotional rhythm. Pause, count, delay, divide, document. The child was not being trained to admire wealth. He was being trained to manage himself in the presence of wealth. The Rockefeller record shows chores tied directly to pay and responsibility. Junior himself had earned pocket money as a boy. He mended doors, killed flies, and sharpened pencils, keeping track of every penny just as his father had done. Later, members of the next generation recalled that from a very early age, part of the allowance had to be given away. Imagine what that does to a child's inner map. Charity is not an afterthought once you are old and respectable. Saving is not what happens if something happens to be left over. Both are built into the first draft of the budget. It is like teaching a child to set the table with a place already reserved for the future and for other people. There is a surprising fact hidden here too. The richest lesson was not to buy assets. It was to do accurate accounting. That sounds dull, almost painfully dull. But dull is often where power hides. Families lose fortunes in dramatic ways at the end. But the weakness often begins in a very uncinematic way. Sloppy records, unclear boundaries, no habit of review, no emotional tolerance for limits. In that sense, a child's ledger is like a tiny fire drill. It matters when everything starts burning. That is the first major point. Rich parents across history have often tried to make money feel concrete, not a blur. A thing you can touch, track, and be answerable to. Like a map with a compass rose, the ledger told the child where he was. Without that map, wealth can feel endless. And when wealth feels endless, judgment usually ends first. If you gave a child $10 today, would that child know what it cost to earn it or how long it should last? Drop your answer in the comments. This story stops being about one dynasty and starts looking like a wider pattern. Warren Buffett was not born into a family on the scale of the Rockefellers, but his childhood shows the same early script. Business Insider describes 6-year-old Buffett buying packs of gum at his grandfather's store and selling them door to door. When one customer wanted only a single stick for a penny, he refused. "We don't break up packs of gum," he remembered. Listen carefully and you hear the same lesson. Inventory matters, margin matters, terms matter. A sale is a decision about rules. Buffett's father was a stockbroker during the Great Depression. That mattered. Hard times are a brutal teacher, but they make prices real. The young Buffett learned that money could be earned in pieces. A pack of gum, a bottle of Coca-Cola, a paper route. By age 16, he had accumulated $53,000. The deeper lesson came early. Money was not something adults made behind a curtain. Money was what happened when you noticed a spread, which means a gap between cost and what someone else will pay. Most children are told not to worry about money. This sounds caring, but it also locks money behind frosted glass. Buffett's childhood cracked the glass. He saw buying, selling, markup, refusal, patience, and repetition. He saw money as water from a well. Someone has to crank the handle. Wealth does not always reproduce itself through cash. It reproduces itself through confidence with numbers. What is the cost? What is the return? Why pay more? Why sell now? Why buy at all? These questions are basic. Great fortunes are protected by children who reach adulthood already speaking the grammar of trade. Buffett's first stock purchase came at age 11. He bought 3 shares of City Service Preferred. The stock fell, and he sold early. He has spent years using that story to explain patience, but patience at 11 had roots in gum packs and routine. By the time the stock certificate arrived, the soil had already been prepared. Silence is also a lesson. So is visible panic. Children are like little economic seismographs. They may not know the word volatility, but they can feel the room shaking. Buffett's great advantage was that the world of buying and selling was familiar before it was formal. This appears in Japan too. How do you keep wealth from dissolving when the founder dies? Tokugawa-era merchant house codes repeated thrift, diligence, duty, and continuity. One code stated that merchants must trade diligently and with frugality. The House of Mitsui formalized this with astonishing force. The Mitsui House Constitution contained 109 articles. It required unity, cooperation, and maintenance of the family tradition of frugality. Family members were forbidden from casually taking on debt. The family tried to turn behavior into architecture, not a sermon, a structure. The rich parent money talk was an environment. In a Mitsui-style world, a child grew up inside a set of rails. Family wealth was shared property, guarded by meetings, rules, and sanctions. This money is bigger than your appetite. You are a link, not the whole bridge. For families without reserves, one bad season could crack the household floorboards. The Mitsui answer was discipline, cold, organized discipline. The child is taught what the family is for. Preserve the shared property. Do not casually endanger the group by taking on debt. Do not drift too far from the enterprise. Reserve funds existed for disasters. Profits had to be allocated with rules. The Constitution itself was kept confidential for decades. Modern wealthy families hire advisors to do something similar. J.P. Morgan's Family Wealth Institute uses a learning roadmap. The very first stage begins at ages 5 to 11. Financial skills are only part of it. The model includes stewardship and accountability. The wealth conversation is about forming a person sturdy enough to stand near numbers without being bent out of shape by them. The richest families in the present are relearning it with consultants. Most people will never know what you now know. In every case, the child meets money early in a controlled setting. The sum is small. The lesson is large. Money is counted. Money is delayed. Money is tied to work, duty, or stewardship. Money is discussed before it is emotionally explosive. By the time a person is 18, money is already attached to status, freedom, romance, fear, comparison, and ego. It is like trying to teach someone to swim after the river has flooded. Before age 10, the water is shallow enough to stand in. A child can learn what saving feels like, what spending regret feels like, and what trade-offs feel like. The lesson is felt in the body. The coin is there. The script is not. It is like handing a child a violin without ever letting them hear music. The stakes are getting bigger. Billions of dollars will transfer through 2045. History is about to run its oldest experiment again. The question is not only who will inherit. The question is who will be ready. The people getting squeezed are the layers just below the top. The Vanderbilt story is the classic warning sign. Cornelius Vanderbilt began with a $100 loan. He amassed $100 million. His son doubled it. And then the structure weakened. Spending swelled. Mansions multiplied. The machine stopped producing heirs who were stewards. Wealth is like an orchard. The first generation plants. The second expands. The third assumes the fruit will always be there. CNBC reported that among high net worth families, many had not told their children about their future inheritance. Secrecy can feel protective. Parents fear killing ambition. But history suggests silence creates its own trap. A child often meets wealth the way a person meets deep water. Modern research says the discomfort is a main problem. 7 out of 10 family members are uncomfortable talking about wealth. The vault grew larger, while the language around the vault grew smaller. The survivors made money concrete early. They did not let money remain a fog. Rockefeller children recorded every receipt. They linked money to values larger than consumption. The talk is not how to get rich, but what money is for. If money is attached to duty, it becomes a tool. They practiced gradual disclosure, not total secrecy, not total exposure. Give a child a little control, then a little more. Let maturity and responsibility climb together. They let children feel friction. A rule that the allowance drops if the math is wrong. Friction is memory. It makes the child notice motion. A world without friction raises adults who are shocked by limits. Write it down. Know where it went. Save some. Give some. Do not confuse access with ownership. That is the money talk rich parents have. Money comes from somewhere. Money goes somewhere. Tell it where to go. Small sums, early habits, open language, delayed gratification, repetition, accountability. History returns to these tools like the tide. This is historical and educational analysis. It is not financial advice. Consult a professional before making any financial decision. This video is not for everyone. If one person in your life needs to hear this, share it. Subscribe for more. History shows that patterns are visible if you look. I will see you in the next one.